Just got back from Brickvention 2023 and it was an absolute blast. Let's take a look at all of the Bionicle MOCs that were on display this year at Brickvention, and there was some really high quality, awesome stuff. Much like Jafer's stuff. Really so cool just to see all of his stuff in person. I'm a big fan of his work, and to be able to then actually have it in front of me and to look at it from multiple angles and just sort of take it in with it right in front of me was a whole different experience. I've got a brand new love of his stuff. To be able to go to a convention and see the stuff you see online in person is such a beautiful new experience. I love all these greebles on Jafer's self-mock here. The blending between the two of the smoother textures and the greebled stuff is magnificent, beautifully, expertly done. This dragon mock of Jafer's was loved by so many different people. The idea of using some of that cloth stuff there from some Ninjago dragons, and then even the great idea of using this piece here that you get on some of these plant pieces here for the lips is amazing. His Skull Kid mock, also fantastic. Unfortunately, I forgot to take pictures of a large amount of it, so here is an overview shot, which is Jafer's actual image. And same thing with his Toothless mock. Totally slipped my mind to take photos of it. I wholeheartedly apologize, but it was there. You can see it in the corner over there. His Chameleon mock is awesome, as is his Treasure Planet mock, fit with some beautiful eyebrows. Love that design. They're really cool, especially those balloons for that belly. Brilliant design. Speaking of brilliant designs, Kung Fu Panda inspired mocks here. I love the repetition on the tail here, especially the idea of integrating some red rubber bands there. Just makes for such a brilliant, gorgeous looking design. The dude's a master of his craft, and he's also a very lovely person. It was great to meet him as well. Now to an old friend of mine, this is Lockheed, who I've had the pleasure of meeting many times at Brickvention. Bunch of fantastic Bionicles. I love the color blocking on this to establish like overalls for a fisherman aesthetic, and a great fish design there as well. So much life to that mock. More of those balloon shell pieces that we saw before on Jafer's mock, this time being used as like ears on a sort of almost rabbit-like mock. Now I like this mock here. Lockheed was saying it's the closest thing they have to a self mock because, as you can see here, they're sort of decorating a Warhammer miniature, and that's a fun idea to add something like that to your self-mock if you have other hobbies similar to that. I like this Bahato design because it's got the boomerang, but it's also got the more sort of like G1 reminiscent legs. It's kind of a beautiful mix of the two there. This mock's awesome. I was talking to Lockheed about the bases on some of these mocks, or the stands, whatever you want to call them, and Lockheed was saying how much they love to use wedge plates instead of just like that kind of like pixelated effect that you can get if you just build like a nice sort of system base. And I have to agree, the sort of beautiful angles of wedge plates on the edge there just look so beautiful. Some nice minty colors and some beautiful dishes all throughout this mock here. We actually bought a lot of dishes at the vendors at Brickvention and sort of split them amongst ourselves there. It's a great, very handy piece to have, as you can see across all these mocks here. Jack built some of these mocks here, and it's a smaller display, but some really, really impressive mocks. Now, actually, just a quick note, if you're like, oh, Ben, slow down on some of these, I will be doing individual videos on a good majority of these mocks, and they'll go into a lot more detail, so stay tuned for some of those. Now, this Lava Beast mock, amazing, a brilliant revamp of the set, and I love that system sword, that sort of like carved stone and lava. It just looks incredible. This mock's awesome here. I really enjoy the sort of like emoji style face there, using some of those old printed tiles, which if you want those in black nowadays, they're very expensive, unfortunately. This gumball crab is so adorable. I love the idea of using those ball joint pieces in different colors for that gumball effect, and then also using them in purple for the eyes there. A very cute design. Next, over to some awesome Halo creations by Max. Now, you might look at these and be like, Ben, you said this was Bionicle mocks, and these are pretty system heavy. But what is Constraction these days? What is a Bionicle these days? I feel like the line between using Bionicle pieces and using a lot of system pieces is so blurred. So I don't know, I'm kind of focusing specifically on character and creature builds and other sort of Constraction adjacent stuff. So yeah, this is almost an Ant-Man color scheme, but hey, if it works well on Ant-Man, you can easily use it on your own mocks, and I'm sure it's accurate to the source material. Halo's not something I'm super versed in, but that's okay. I love the wedge plates here on this almost sort of more like samurai aesthetic here. Now, obviously, again, I'm sure it's accurate to the source material, but if you're going for a sort of samurai look for your characters, definitely look into some system pieces like those wedge plates there, because when you look at that sort of like waistcoat design there, it's absolutely magnificent, and it just looks so cool. And hey, if you like your video games, definitely take some inspiration from them and apply elements of them to your character builds, or just straight up build the guns and creatures and characters from it, because like you can see here, you can just get some absolutely incredible stuff, and there's so much you can draw from. Moving over now to some Gundam MOCs from Donnie Chen, or one specifically. Some of the others are by a different builder, but we'll get to that in a second. You can see a few other sort of smaller builds around this MOC here, but you'll have to stay tuned for a future video where I talk a little bit more about those, because they didn't quite fit the Bionicle mark here, but beautiful to see a system version of a Gundam built so beautifully. Now we go to some Gundam by Blackley Cat. Even more of these beautiful white balloon pieces being used, and they work great on the arm there. Lovely to see one piece having so many different usages across many different MOCs. I adore this one here. It's probably my favorite on the table, actually. So you might notice some of these sort of gold highlights here. Now, these were water slide decals is what they were saying. And it's funny because I think this MOC works very well just as a black and red MOC. But when you do put those decals on there, it really does elevate it just that much more. So if you're well versed in waterside decals, I am certainly not. Maybe it's something you can pursue. I like that it does have a little stand here, and it's nice to see how subtle it is as well. You almost kind of just forget it's there. The trans clear and the other sort of black highlights on the stand there, you just kind of group it in with the rest of the table and you just don't see it. So, hey, these Gundam are all so impressive and so cool, but sometimes they can't hold themselves up. So a little bit of extra support there is always crucial. And you can actually see an additional support here on this one. There's no base kind of around the crotch area, but you can see just on the back of the kind of wings there's those little trans clear Technic beams there, and those certainly help it to stand up. More balloon pieces, this time in red. And another fantastic Gundam. I was going to say this one was my favorite, but I said the last one was. A lot of them were my favorites. I've always liked this sort of battle damaged aesthetic, and you don't really see it that much on Bionicle MOCs. So hey, maybe you could build a battle damaged MOC. It works really well here, and this is perfectly recreating the source material here. It looks gorgeous, and some custom cloth as well, but it certainly gets the job done. You can see some ratchet joints being used for the elbows there, and in future videos I'll be covering some more detailed insights about the frames and other things that I can notice on these MOCs that maybe can help you build your own versions of them. Love the arm design on this here, that almost sort of like multi kind of like stringy look to them. I don't know how you describe it, but it looks cool. And then going back to Donnie Chen, this is his version of Optimus Prime, and it looks awesome. Certainly one of the cooler tables here at Brickvention. Awesome stuff on this one here. But there's more. So yeah, Blackley Cat has made this absolutely incredible Grimlock MOC here. Now obviously this is inspired by Grimlock from the Michael Bay movies, but man, it looks absolutely so impressive and so cool. Something that I think is so interesting is seeing how system pieces and Bionicle pieces work so well to form that sort of very heavily greebled aesthetic that Michael Bay Transformers always had. And it's just kind of uncanny how awesome that looks. Yeah, I love it. You're going to see a lot more Transformers within that style later on, and you can see just how effectively that's translated with those types of pieces there. It's so cool. I love the idea of these dinosaur heads for sort of shoulder pads. Obviously, that's accurate to the source material, but it's just a cool idea, and there's various other sort of like helmets and masks and things that you could recreate that look on a smaller scale. It's cool. Now we see Devastator here, and it's interesting to note how so many Technic sets have that sort of construction focus, which obviously relates back to Devastator being that sort of combiner and combining all the different construction related vehicles together to form this sort of large combiner model here. And you look at some of the different stickers, some of the other sort of construction related pieces like the scoops, the treads, all sorts of different stuff. The design just flows perfectly. So it's interesting to see, all your different Technic sets and stuff, how easily those pieces can be very quickly translated when you want to build a Transformer that has those specific vibes. Now we've got Jetfire here, and we're going to see a whole bunch of other different characters here. I love this old man Kane, because we don't have enough old man Kanes and just old man Bionicle MOCs these days, so that's awesome. These hands are great. I love seeing those larger claw pieces in that translucent color there. You're playing with that larger scale. You can use those pieces in weird and wonderful ways that you couldn't on a smaller MOC. These CCBS horses are gorgeous as well. Pretty easy to recreate for the most part. So if you wanted to give your Self MOC or any of your other Bionicle MOCs a steed, it would be easy enough to do. A cool abacus, some scales as well, those are great. Starscream, Megatron, Optimus, and all sorts of other different characters from the Michael Bay movies recreated here in Bionicle, with little hints of system and little hints of Technic, as well as G1 and G2 pieces. Like I said, it's a beautiful tapestry of all those different parts just working perfectly together. Now, something I wanted to briefly touch on is just Brickvention itself. So maybe you're seeing these and you're like, man, I wish I could have come to this convention. Now, obviously, it's in Melbourne, Australia, and you may not be from Australia or be able to travel down to Australia, but bear in mind there are conventions all across the world, wherever you live. Just do a little bit of research, look up your hometown and put LEGO Convention next to it on Google, or look at any local lugs that might exist in your area. That's LEGO user groups, people who hang out and talk and do LEGO or whatever. There should be plenty of opportunities around the world. Not everyone will, but do a bit of research. I'm sure something like that will exist around you. Now, we can see this tooth design here, which we saw on a previous MOC, and we've seen all across the Bionicle Inspiration series and things. But it's interesting to see how it's been painted a little bit here, just to kind of cover it up and kind of blend it in again with the rest of the design. You can see a bit more clearly here. It's a good way of doing it. Certainly is. So whether or not you're a fan of Transformers, I still think it's really important to, look to those movies or look to any other sort of iterations of Transformers, because, I don't know, I mean, I've been a big Transformers fan a lot of my life, and I think there's so many different characters and so many cool, unique designs that work perfectly if you were to translate them into Bionicle form, or if you wanted to just take little notes from it and let it inspire your own unique creation. There's certainly a lot that you can take inspiration from there. And this Lord of the Rings Fell Beast is magnificent. The shaping on this is gorgeous. Just the overall look of it is so fantastic. I mean, look at that. There's no gaps anywhere. It's just this beautiful seamless transition throughout the tail up into the body. And the Witch King is so well done. Using some of those Ninjago like blade pieces for the helmet. It's gorgeous. Look at that thing. It's magnificent. This really took me by surprise. It's just beautiful. And speaking of other awesome stuff, we're gonna finish this episode on Anthony Wilson's fantastic creations here. Anthony was such a great person to hang out with a lot at Brickvention, and his MOCs always impress me. I mean, his Leviathan in the back there may be one of my all-time favorite MOCs. I have a picture of it on my wall. It's so cool. The way that all of his stuff just looks on this table is magnificent. So many bright colors and fun designs. He has so much life behind his characters. I mean, the color scheme of this, the way there's zero gaps in this thing, and it's just such beautiful transitions between all the different body parts. It's magnificent. Some nice sort of water vibes here too. He's got a few other MOCs that we'll touch upon that later, but I love these little guys here. Those sort of trans satin blue colored wings. Such a nice color, and it works really well as that wing design here. Love this brain look with all these tubes on the top of the head here. Such a fun little MOC. And speaking of fun little MOCs, I adore this little dragon here. There's something so cheeky about this design, and this sort of beautiful S-curve of the body here. It's like a cartoon character come to life. It's just, it's beautiful. I was talking about sea stuff before. Yeah, this is very system heavy, I understand. But hey, Anthony still built it, and he built a bunch of other Bionicles, so we'll definitely have a brief chat about it. Love those rocks. The chat was very brief, like I said. Here's his Hellrex MOC here, and I love the sort of like planet thing in the background there, this nice sort of silhouette, like some sort of art piece. It's gorgeous. The bases on these are so cool. Weird, like blocky sort of designs with crystals and different things like that. It just elevates the MOC so much. And also trans pink and dark blue, gorgeous color scheme. Pleasure to see this Plague Mech. Obviously, Jafer made Plague Mechs, and then Anthony made his own version of a Plague Mech. You should have seen Jafer when he first saw this. He was so excited. It was awesome to see. But this MOC is just magnificent. Love the repetition of some of these magenta panels and the different dishes. Such a menacing, awesome-looking design. Anthony knows what he's doing. Cool stuff. So many awesome Bionicles at Brickvention this year. Hopefully, you can make it down one year in the future. And hopefully, you got a little bit inspired seeing some of these MOCs. More coming soon. Stay tuned. Thanks for watching. Happy building, and bye for now.